This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
Okay, you gotta work. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome one and all for a special edition of Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented TV, where we break national stories. And that's what we're doing right now. If you're watching this live, you're hearing this for the first time. There will be a by-election in Gorton and Denton, which is near Manchester. That's been caused by the resignation of a Labour Member of Parliament. And until now, it's been assumed that this is a straight fight between Reform UK and the Labour Party. Indeed, the ailing Prime Minister, in my opinion, Keir Starmer, has said so. And he's trying to focus everybody on thinking that's the choice. I can reveal to you now, as a world exclusive, that Advance UK, another burgeoning party in the United Kingdom, has also announced its intention to stand and contest that seat. The candidate is Nick Buckley. If you watch Unprecedented TV regularly, you'll know that he's a regular guest of mine and of others here on the show. That's not why he's standing, but that's a very big piece of news, because until this moment, nobody knew that Advance UK and Nick Buckley would be the candidate. The big story is he's joining me now. Nick Buckley, what big news? You're standing for Parliament for Advance UK. Why and why?
Yes, I am. I've been thinking about it for a while, since obviously Andrew Gwynn stepped down. It's needed. At the moment, this race is not a democratic race in Gorton and Denton. It seems to be a race between Labour losing and Reform winning. And this isn't democracy. We don't hand over by-election victories just to popular parties because there's no one else to vote for. Reform need competition. If Reform don't get competition, they're going to end up being, well, which they are anyway, a slightly better version of the Tory party. And Manchester doesn't need that. The country doesn't need that. So I'm going to have a loud voice. I'm going to get on the streets. I'm going to speak to people. And I'm going to tell them the party and the policies that are needed. And if people agree with me, they'll vote for me. And if they vote for me, maybe Reform then will start changing some of their policies. Maybe they'll get a bit tougher. Maybe they'll start moving away from being Tory 2.0. But at the moment, I'm going to be a disruptor. I'm not going to follow the rules. I've never followed the rules, let's be honest. But I'm going to say what I mean, and I'm going to mean what I say. And the people will judge me on that.
Let's go back to your political history. You have stood in the past against Andy Burnham, who is the Manchester Mayor, Labour Party, who actually tried to become the candidate but was thwarted. Why did you stand against Andy Burnham? Just tell us about your mayoral ambitions, because you were an independent then. You weren't standing for Advance UK.
I've stood for mayor twice. I stood in 2021 for Reform UK. They were brand new. And I was the first person in Reform to stand for a big election. But after a year of being with Reform in 2021, I walked away. I realised then they weren't the party that they were pretending to be. They had real issues with free speech. And this was 2021. And then I realised I want to have another go at Andy Burnham and the mayoralship. So then I planned to stand again in 2024. And I stood as an independent, funded it myself. I had to take money out of my pension pot to fund my campaign. And I worked on it for 15 months. And I came third. Tories beat me, and obviously Andy Burnham Labour was so far ahead. You know, that's how well he did. And of course, I've always been interested in politics, hence why I wanted to stand for mayor. And the reason why I stood for mayor in the first place, and I can remember the exact time, I was watching TV in 2021, and Greater Manchester Police had just gone into special measures, and I'm screaming at the TV, what is going on? Why are these Labour mayors? Why is this government, Tory government? Why is everything crumbling away? Why are they destroying everything? And if we destroy the police, which we have now, by the way, if we destroy the police, crime's going to go rampant. The streets won't be safe. 4 years later, my predictions have all come true. We're not safe on the streets. So when I decided I wanted to run, it was like, well, who am I going to stand for? I can't stand by myself. I don't even know what I'm doing. I can't stand by myself. And the very next day, I think it was, Richard Tice was on TV saying, the Brexit party is no more, but we're starting a new party called Reform UK. And I thought to myself, you've not got a candidate. So I tweeted him straight away, and he phoned me up 40 minutes later. We had a chat. He went, yeah, you can stand for us for mayor. That's why I stood for Reform 4 or 5 years ago.
So you were a Reform candidate, and you, at that point at least, were working closely with this gentleman here. Britain needs reform, as it says there. And at that time, if I'd asked you this question, why are you standing for reform, you'd probably have given me an equally plausible answer. So before we go any further, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about the Andy Burnham situation too. Why are you quite clearly now supporting a different party to the party of Nigel Farage on the screen there?
Reform are not the party many people think they are. People have been bamboozled by Nigel Farage and the rhetoric. They are Tories 2.0. And again, let me make clear, there's nothing wrong in being a Tory. There's nothing wrong in having a Tory party, and especially having a better Tory party, because this Tory party we have has been a complete waste of time. 14 years in government and did nothing. Now, Reform just want to be a better version of the Tory party. Well, great for them. And many of their supporters actually tell me online, if you look through the comments of my Twitter, so many Reform supporters are saying, Nick, but what's wrong with being a better Tory party? There's nothing wrong in that. But then Reform can't have it both ways. They can't have it as in we're a better version of the Tories, but then the next day saying we're not the Tories, we're different. They're not different. They're the right-wing Tories that have just been rebranded. That's why I couldn't stand for them again.
Right.
And I stood for Advance, because Advance are the new boys on the block. We'll see how well they do. We'll see, if they have a long future in British politics. I hope they do. They seem to be doing all the right things. But when you're searching for someone to stand for in a semi-socialist country, it's very hard to find a party you actually want to stand for. And I found Advance, and therefore I joined Advance.
Let's finish on the Andy Burnham question. Andy Burnham quite clearly trying to make a leadership bid, being thwarted. The general assumption, I have to say, this is my opinion as well, is that if Andy Burnham had stood for the Labour Party, he'd probably have won. Indeed, I think even Reform UK have said that. He's not standing. Just a word about this. And by the way, I know Andy pretty well. I'm quite impressed with him as a person, though politically he and I are pretty different people. Do you think Andy Burnham would have won if he'd stood?
He'd have been the odds-on favourite to win. He's very popular in the country, basically. He's the most popular Labour politician in the country, and that's a fact. I've been saying for 2 years, when I was running last time for mayor, or longer than that, it'd be 3 years now. Andy Burnham only became mayor of Greater Manchester to advance his aim of becoming Prime Minister. It's called the Boris Johnson route to 10 Downing Street. And I've been saying for a long time, Andy Burnham will leave at some point to be an MP, to get back to Parliament to try to be Prime Minister. So if he'd have stood, there's a very good chance he'd have won. If he'd have won, there's an extremely good chance within 6 months he'd have been Prime Minister of this country. Now, Andy Burnham could still run, but it takes huge courage to do the next step now. Andy Burnham would have to resign from the Labour Party, stand as an independent, win the by-election, get to Parliament, and then reapply to be a Labour member again. I think it was it Ken Livingstone who did that in London. So that would be the way back for Andy Burnham. Has he got the courage for that? I don't think he has. I think basically now this is the end now of Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham has shown the people of Greater Manchester that they were a stepping stone. He's shown the country he hasn't got the follow through to do what needs to be done to save the country. And it's also destroyed Keir Starmer, because all those Labour MPs were sat in Parliament going, please bring Andy Burnham. We may not like him, but my word is popular. And what we need now is a popular Prime Minister, because that might save my seat at the general election. And I'm on 96 grand a year, and I don't want to lose my seat.
You could be on 96 grand a year in 4 weeks' time, in which case I'll ask you a whole bunch of awkward questions about income too. If you've just joined us, this is an unscheduled exclusive interview with Nick Buckley, MBE, who has announced his intention to contest the by-election in Gorton and Denton, believed to be on the 27th of February this year, as a result of the resignation of Andrew Gwynn. Let's talk about the Andrew Gwynn affair, if you like. There he is. He's standing down. And we don't need to talk about the reasons. There's not much benefit. He's history now. But I'll ask you, the question is related to what we were discussing just now about Andy Burnham. I had the impression that Andrew Gwynn was standing down in order to make way for Andy Burnham to stand. Does that have any impact on the electoral calculus, the likely outcome of this by-election?
I've no idea. Absolutely no idea. Everything's in flux at the moment. You'd be a brave man to predict what's going to happen regarding politics in the UK. This is a Labour safe seat. I mean, Gorton Denton's a Labour safe seat. They won over 50% of the vote. It wouldn't surprise me that if they were down to single figures at this by-election, we just don't know. The Muslim vote has become very powerful. We've got the Green Party now saying, we're basically a Muslim party. We've got George Galloway's party going on about Gaza. It looks like they're going to be standing in this election. Anything can happen. So Andrew Gwynn has probably made way for Andy Burnham for two reasons. First of all, his career was over. He insulted his local people in a joke. I know it was a joke. He didn't mean it. But this is politics. You can't make jokes about wanting people to die to make your life easy. You can't make that joke. So his career was over. So you might as well step down to Andy Burnham for this one reason, which is, wouldn't it be great having a Prime Minister of the country who owes you a massive favour? A massive favour. And if you wanted to be, Lord Gwynn, or if you wanted to sit on a quango, for 3 minutes a month and be on, £500,000 a year, wouldn't it be great to have a Prime Minister who owes you everything? That's why he did what he did.
Didn't really work too well, though, did it? Keir Starmer, who, in my opinion, is terrified of the prospect of Andy Burnham MP, thwarted it. He's taken responsibility for it as well.
He has, and that's the final nail in Starmer's coffin, because the Labour MP, most Labour MPs wanted him. Again, not because we're supporters of Andy Burnham, just because they knew they had a better chance of winning their seat with Andy Burnham in power. Because Andy Burnham's a good communicator, good talker, comes across as a man of the people. It turns out he's more mental than Keir Starmer, basically, with his policies. But at least he comes across as human. And that's how we judge our politicians now. Not on intelligence, not on experience, not on what they've achieved. We rate politicians good now because they come across as normal. That's how poor our political class is at the moment.
Now, let's talk about the reality. Keir Starmer himself has said, here we are, in fact, and he says that Gorton and Denton is a straight fight between Labour and Reform, says Starmer. Since the resignation of former MP Andrew Gwynn, speculation has mounted that Reform could win the seat Labour retained with 51% of the vote. Three things we learned from this. First of all, that Starmer's trying to direct the public. Let's not pretend anybody who's been involved in politics knows he's saying this on purpose. They're trying to direct the debate between Labour and then Reform, because I suppose he believes lots of people are terrified of Reform. The second thing we learn is that Reform is probably the favourite. I haven't checked the odds, but I bet you they probably are. And thirdly, that they've had 51% of the seat, of the votes in the seat. That's a pretty safe position. You coming into this election and Advance UK coming into this election could make it far harder for Reform to win. Have you considered that?
Absolutely. There's a very good possibility that if Reform lose now, it's because I entered the race. Do I want Labour or the Greens to win this? No, I don't. But this is politics. This is democracy. We've all got a right to throw our hat in the ring. We've all got a right to give our opinions, to state our policies, to try to win the election. I'm not one for saying, oh, I don't want Labour and Greens, therefore I've got to vote Reform UK. No, vote for what you want. Don't vote for the least crap of what's on offer. People will vote for me because of what I'm offering, because what I've done, because of my experience, because of my connections to Gorton and Denton. You know, I'm not a Southern academic that's just driven up to Greater Manchester, found Gorton for the first time, and now knocking on doors. I'm not someone who pretends to be a female plumber who lives in Hale, which is exactly where the Premier League footballers all live, who has a husband who's an executive of a pharmaceutical company who's on millions. Now, I'm not one of those people. I lived in Gorton. I've lived in Gorton twice, as a baby and as an adult. I've worked on the streets. I won an award of Gorton Police for keeping the community safe. I based my charity in Gorton. My charity's worked across Denton and Gorton. And the area's bigger than that. You know, Levenshulme as well, parts of Longside are all included in this area. I went to school in the area. My primary school was Stanley Grove, which is in the area. I went to the secondary school, Central High School for Boys, which is in the area, which was a failing school. I went to a tough school. My music teacher was stabbed 42 times in the chest by a pupil. You know, I've come from those communities. I know those communities. My friends and family live in the area, so they've got a real fight on their hands now. I've not been parachuted in. You know, I'm from that area. I've worked in that area. I used to work on Gorton Market at one point. So I am a man of the people there. And then my experience, you know, I've spent over 20 years now stopping kids getting involved in crime. When I set my charity up, I used my redundancy from the council. I didn't go on holiday with my redundancy. I didn't get another job somewhere and keep my redundancy. I put it all into a charity to keep kids safe on the streets, to make sure they could make decent decisions. And then I started getting homeless people off the streets because I couldn't look anymore at Deansgate in Manchester City Centre without saying, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that we're allowing our citizens, fellow citizens, to live and die on the streets without doing something about it. I got over 100 people off the streets in a couple of years. So that's my experience. That's my background. That's what people will be voting for. Not for a rosette, not for a different colour, not because I've got great PR, not because, you know, I'm a charismatic leader. Not those things. People of Gorton and Denton, if they vote for me, will be voting for me because of what I've done and what I'm going to do. And I'm going to hold everybody to account in Parliament. I'm also going to hold the local councils to account. They're going to hate me. Honestly, they're going to hate me.
I don't know many people who want to go into a job to be hated. I know you don't operate from scripts. I know you well enough for that. You're telling us that, and you're telling the world and the viewers that you have an authentic local authority, if you like, credentials. I also suspect you've just done a quick round robin of other candidates. I think you probably already know that Matt Goodwin, pictured there in Gorton and Denton, I think, with Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK. Now, Matt Goodwin is the Reform UK candidate. When I stood for Parliament, I stood in Wales. Did actually have some connections there, but I had been living in Newcastle upon Tyne. The fact that Matt Goodwin doesn't have your connections in Gorton and Denton doesn't necessarily mean he would be a bad MP.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just giving my credentials of why I should be taken seriously in that by-election. I quite like Matt Goodwin. He's an academic. He comes up with some good reports. He seems to be on the same side of the debate. He never used to be, by the way. From what I've read, he used to be much closer to the left. Now, for Matt, I basically would say this. Matt is a very intelligent academic. That's a given. I've never even been to university. That's the sort of person I am. Matt's the sort of person who'd be able to tell you and measure the internal diameter of a can of baked beans, but he won't be able to open them. So we need less academics. We need people who have done things. We need doers. We don't need talkers or researchers.
I've never heard that analogy before. I sat next to Matt in an event a few months ago. Very engaging kind of fellow. Some would say, and Matt might say, and you have said, that your involvement in this election could cost him the seat. But we'll come back to that in a minute. We found quite a cool picture of you. There you are. Where was that? And what were you doing?
That was the one of the underground walkways under the Mancunian Way. And the Mancunian Way is a motorway that goes through Manchester city centre.
And who's that in the background walking off? Did you ever find out?
I've no idea.
So there you are. That was, I guess, when you were standing for Mayor of London. Sorry, correction, that's Freudian. If only we could get a new Mayor of London, but for Mayor of Manchester. You say that you've got local credentials. You've also got an MBE. Remind us why you've got that MBE.
I got an MBE for decades of working with young people, stopping them getting involved in crime. Mm-hmm. Again, using my redundancy to set up a multi-award winning charity to work on the streets. So not working in youth clubs, basically, working on the streets with the toughest kids in the toughest neighbourhoods and taking services and help and support to them where they are. There's no point having a youth club if the kids who are causing all the trouble have been barred from the youth club or don't want to go into the youth club or don't want to access job opportunities. What's the point of having these opportunities if these young people won't access them? So I set a charity up to take services to them because they're customers. And we forget sometimes, people are customers and we need more customer service. So my charity, I'm not involved in charity anymore now, but it's still doing excellent. And they go on the streets, evenings, weekends, find the kids potentially causing trouble, find the kids who are potentially in harm's way of being groomed, of being pulled into criminal gangs, of being attacked, of carrying knives, or maybe being, low-level drug dealers. We work with them, we speak to them, we try to put them on different paths so they have a better life. And if they have a better life, that means those communities have better lives as well.
Just a question there. How many years did you do in that kind of work?
Over 2 decades.
And now you also worked with Gerald Kaufman, who was a former member of Parliament for Gorton and Denton. Why?
I set up, again, in Gorton, I set up a project called the Ambassadors Project, where we highlighted a group of young people who we thought could make something of themselves, who could excel. And they became part of the project. And I wanted to show him that the sky's the limit in this country. It really is. So I spoke to Gerald Kaufman, who was a Labour MP at the time. He's sadly passed away now. And he invited me and the ambassadors to Parliament. So we took him to Parliament. He gave him a tour of the building. He snuck us into the Lord's Chamber. And we had security shouting at us to get out. And Gerald Kaufman's going, "Do you know who I am? I'm the leader of the House here," because he was the oldest serving MP at the time. So we had a great tour with him. We then sat in the gallery and listened to a debate. So that again, that's just an example of what I wanted the Gorton young people to be able to achieve, to know that they could be MPs, that they can achieve, and he allowed that to happen.
Let's talk about the decision you've made, and it's a big decision. You've stood previously, you've explained your reasons, but whatever your reasons, you did stand for Reform UK, and so at some point you felt that was the future, and that means that you assumed that Nigel Farage, who we saw before, should be the Prime Minister. Essentially, what you're telling us now is that Ben Habib should be the Prime Minister, and that for some reason he's a better performer than Nigel Farage. Why have you chosen Ben Habib above Nigel Farage as the person who can save the country?
I haven't necessarily chosen Ben Habib because one person can't save the country. Again, that's one of the flaws of Reform UK. It's the Farage cult. He's the Messiah. He's the one who must be obeyed. You don't save a country like that. So Ben Habib, very intelligent.
I actually find, just to interrupt you, I know Farage very well. I've known him for over a decade, and I find him affable and intelligent. And I still find him a very refreshing change from the legacy parties. By legacy parties, I mean Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrats. Those parties have colluded in wrecking the country, in my view. Nigel Farage isn't part of that cabal, or is he?
He is part of that cabal. He's just a much better communicator with a much better vision. Farage is part of the Uni Party, but he's the Uni Party of 30 years ago when we had sensible politicians who had a vision, and that's Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage doesn't want to change the system. He just wants to improve the system. He wants to be part of the system. There's going to be no great changes under a Reform UK government. Ben Habib's a bit different. Ben Habib is recruiting talent. He's recruiting dozens and dozens of people to have influence on policies, to create policies. And it's the first couple of steps for Advance UK. So I can't even go into many of the policies at the moment now because they don't exist. But where Ben's different is Ben sees this is going to be a team effort to save this country. And it's going to take a lot of hard work, and it's going to be about bringing the people on board. The best example I can give you is at Christmas, 2 Christmases ago, once after the general election, Reform UK looked fantastic. They'd only won 5 seats, which was great at the election. No one thought they were going to win any. And suddenly they're up in the polls, and it looked like this is going to be the vehicle for change for this country. And I thought, right, I'll join the party because I just want to be on board. I want to. It's not about me. It's never been about me. Setting a charity up has never been about me. It's about saving the country I love. So I joined Reform UK again a year ago, and I stayed 4 months. And after 4 months, I realised this isn't for me. This isn't the party that's going to save the country. And I'll give you the 3 examples that happened in 10 days why I resigned from the party just under a year ago. And it was this. David Bull, the chair of Reform UK, had just been elected chair. And in his first speech, he was talking about how immigration built this UK. They're our lifeblood. Immigration's fantastic. And I'm looking at TV going, are you mental? Immigration didn't build this country. Immigration came to this country because my ancestors built this country. That's why they came. And then a few days later, we had the deputy leader, Richard Tice, being asked, there's a new report out saying that by 2060, white British will be a minority in this country if nothing changes. And he laughed. He laughed and said, who cares? I'll be dead by then. And I said, I care. I care. And the final straw was the big man himself, Nigel Farage, who was in Wales talking about Welsh policy, about building houses for Welsh people. And one of the reporters, and good on them, said, Nigel, can I ask you, what's a Welsh person? And Nigel Farage said, oh, a Welsh person is someone who's lived in Wales for 5 years and pays tax. And I'm like, that's not a Welsh person. And that's when I realised You're just a better version of the Tory party. You're going to do better than the Tory party. You'll implement things better. You're the Tory party of 25 years ago, and that's fine. But you're not the party I want. So I had to resign after 4 months. I thought, I don't support any of this.
So we got Ben Habib there, and you've been quite acerbic in a way about Nigel Farage there. But Nigel Farage is a winner. He's done a lot to bring those legacy parties to account. Many people, from a pragmatic point of view, Nick Buckley, MBE, say, or will say, that you're now reducing the chance of breaking Labour in Gorton and Denton. If you really care about saving the country, and I'm putting this question because a lot of other people will ask you the same question. If you really care about saving the country, why don't you give this man and Matt Goodwin, his candidate, a free run?
Because I know what they're going to do. I listen to what they say. I know what they're going to do. And what they're going to do, it will be slightly better than what we've had the last 20, 30 years. And slightly better isn't good enough for me. It may be good enough for certain people. You know, they may go, oh, I don't want big change. You know, I like the status quo. We just need some tiny little tweaks. A little bit like when Kemi Badenoch said the other day, the UK is not broken. It just needs some little tweaks. It's like, no, it's broken. And you can't fix something by little tweaks. To fix it, we're going to have to do things differently. And Reform's idea of doing things differently is let's employ a load of Tories. Let's employ the people who broke the country to now stand for us because they need another chance. Because we're sure it was a fluke the first time they broke it. They can't break it anymore. They must have learnt their mistake, in which case they've got the information and the skills to fix it. And I'm going, they never had the skills to begin with. They broke the country, not because they thought they were breaking it, because they think it's okay, because they're aiming to achieve what they want to achieve. I want something different. And if you're watching this and you live in Gorton and Denton and you want you want a better status quo, you want, you know, something that you can understand, then you need to vote Reform UK. You do. But if you're sick of the status quo, if over the last 30 years, all the politicians have let you down, the establishment have let you down, career politicians have let you down, if you want someone to do to them what they've been doing to us for far too long, then you need to vote for me, because I'm not going to go in there and tweak the system. I'm not going to go in there and say, oh, if only we can improve Gorting a little bit, if only we can throw some money at Denton, no, those people will be happy. And maybe some people will be happy, but you know what? You don't deserve the crumbs off their table. You deserve the table. And I'm going to turn that table upside down. And this isn't a general election. This by-election doesn't affect the future of the country. Reform have got is at 8 MPs. Them having 9 MPs changes nothing. But having someone like me sat in Parliament, sat next to Rupert Lowe MP, having a Robin to his Batman, that will change stuff. That will scare the bejesus out of them. That will get new conversations in Parliament. I'll drag people screaming and crying over the coal to tell us what they've done and why they didn't do stuff. That's what I'm promising. I'm not promising a couple of quid for the area to shut you all up until next general election. I'm talking about changing this system. I'm talking about changing the country. And it has to start somewhere. And I say it starts in Gorton and Denton.
You clearly are passionate about standing. A few comments coming in here. If you're watching live, this is breaking news here on Unprecedented TV. Nick Buckley, MBE, has announced live on air on Unprecedented that he is standing for Advance UK, that's Ben Habib's party, in the Gorton and Denton by-election. Colin says Britain needs more than reform. Britain needs a miracle. And Enoch Powell, I doubt it's the real one. Starmer, public enemy number 1. Colin adds Manchester is a different world now. A lot of comments there. And Nick says the new UK Prime Minister is Ali Baba. I never really knew who Ali Baba was, but I've always thought that was very alliterative. And a whole lot of comments there. I've got to finish with two other questions very explicitly, and I'm really going to press you on this. Ben Habib was also in Reform UK. If you said that the policy areas aren't very explicitly formed, you will be in this by-election what your policies are. You'll be standing on doorsteps being asked that question. So let me ask you a strategic point. What will Ben Habib do if he's Prime Minister? Why do I ask that question? Because Ben Habib clearly would be your choice for Prime Minister. What would he explicitly do that gives you hope?
What he'd do exactly hasn't been worked out yet. And this isn't a general election. So regardless of who you vote for in this by-election, will not change the government, will not change government policy, will do basically nothing in Parliament, because 9 MPs for Reform still can't do anything. This is about setting the groundwork for change. Now, Advance are only 6 weeks old as a political party. Now, we could make up a load of policies if we wanted to and say these are policies. But again, have we engaged the public? Have we engaged our members, our supporters? That's why we're going to take time to create our policies. I can give you my opinions on many things of what I'll be pushing Advance to do and stand for. But let me reiterate what this by-election is about. This by-election is about two things. It's about supporting Reform UK and sending a message across the country that we think Reform UK should be the next government at the next general election, which is 3 years away. Or it could be, we're sick of all of them. We're sick of all these career politicians. We're sick of all these people who are linked to the establishment. We're sick of all these millionaires who want to get involved in British politics for reputation. And what I'm saying is, if that's you, then you need to vote a doer, not a sayer. You need to vote for someone, a disruptor, someone who's going to go in there and create waves and make mistakes and put people on edge and find the truth and tell you the truth, because we're being lied to in so many ways by so many people that it's only someone like Rupert Lowe over the last year has been able to get information and stats off the civil service. And we read it and we go, that's been going on. Afghan migrants are 22 times more likely to commit sexual assault than a British person, any British person. He got that information by going on and on at the civil service. That's what we need. We need more Rupert Lowes in Parliament. That's what we need. Because this is just a by-election. It won't change anything major, because Labour already have, such a big majority. They don't care. Reform UK is still so small, it won't affect them. Get someone in there who's really going to upset that apple cart and get some change and highlight why we're failing and hold people to account. Someone fearless, someone who cares about the people, and basically someone who loves the country because it's in their DNA, because that's all they've ever done throughout their whole career and life, was try to love the country and improve the country that gave them everything. It's an easy decision for me.
Let's look at the result the last time. There it is. Andrew Gwynn, 51% of the vote. In second place, it was Reform UK with 14%. Everyone else behind that. Reform UK would be performing something of an electoral miracle to win that. We've already established, and we don't need to cover it again, that with you coming into the mix, it's possible you will take votes from Reform UK. But what's relevant here is that Advance UK, as you said yourself, didn't exist and isn't on the dial. The question, therefore, is, and you've covered it in a way, but the question for you is, if Reform UK came to you and said, we understand your frustration, we want to work with Advance UK, we'll do a deal with you in Gorton and Denton if you don't stand there. I don't expect you to be amateurish and to do a deal negotiating here on unprecedented TV. But is there a prospect of some kind of collaboration?
Not in my book, no, because all that would do is that would make me the same as them and everybody else, doing deals, backhanders, slapping each other on the back, sewing up the election between themselves. That's how we got into this mess in the first place. I'm not here for that. If I was here for that, I never would have left Reform UK. Maybe I should have joined, the Tories. Maybe I should have joined Labour over these decades if all I wanted was power, influence, and increase my reputation. Maybe, Reform were on the up last year. They're on the up now. I should have just kept my mouth shut when I was in Reform, and maybe I'd have been given a chance to stand for them at the general election. That would have been a sensible thing to do if all I want is to win an election. But no, I left the up-and-coming party. I resigned publicly and told them why I'm resigning. I might be many things. I may be naive. I may be stupid. I may be a bit of an idiot. I may be uneducated. All those things may be true, but I've got morals. I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror if I saw myself turning into the career politicians that I despise in all the parties. I wouldn't be the Nick Buckley I know. I'm never going down that path. And if that means I never get elected, so be it, because I've got no intentions of selling my soul just so I can say I was an MP and I'm on 96 grand a year. That's something I won't be doing. So no, there is no deal with Reform UK, not because I dislike Reform UK. I like them all. I've met Nigel Farage. I've been on his show. Richard Tice is a lovely man, in it for all the right reasons. I just disagree with some of his policies. All the voters and all the supporters of Reform UK, I love. Most patriotic people you ever get to meet. They're decent people. So I've not got a problem with that. What I'm saying is we need different. The status quo and improved status quo isn't good enough. So there is no deals with Reform UK.
Thank you so much. And we here at Unprecedented TV will give all the other candidates who wish to come on the chance to put their stand out as well. But we're speaking with Nick Buckley, MBE, if you've just joined us, who has announced his intention to stand in the Gorton and Denton by-election as the candidate for Advance UK. And to stress again, we at Unprecedented are here for free speech. We will give Matt Goodwin and all of the candidates the chance to have the same space. But let me finish with this, or let you finish with this. If you were to summarize in a few words what you, as Nick Buckley, MBE MP, would do for Gorton and Denton, how would you answer that question? If I was an elector, obviously I'm not in this by-election, but if I was an elector and I said on the doorstep, all right, Nick, what will you do for me? What would you say?
I will do for you what needs to be done, which is this. I'm going to do to the councils and Parliament what they've been doing to you for decades, because that's what they need to be done. They need to feel what it's like not to be able to speak freely, to be constantly criticised, to be pulled over the coals, to be embarrassed in the public press. That's what I'm going to be doing for the people of Gorton and Denton. I'm going to give you a little bit of sweet revenge, because that's the only way we change this system.
Thank you so much. I'll just read one more comment. Samantha Smith, 9088, says, Nick is a great man. I hope he wins. So from a sample of one, if she was the electorate, you would be the next MP. Thank you so much. That is Nick Buckley, MBE, here on an exclusive and a special edition of Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV. What you've just heard is Nick Buckley, in his own words, on behalf of Advance UK, the newest party in the United Kingdom, announcing his intention to contest the Gorton and Denton by-election. You have your say. Thank you for all the comments. Sorry I didn't get through all of them. Very grateful to Nick Buckley, MBE, and Advance UK for using us here at Unprecedented TV as the platform to share that maybe momentous news. We'll obviously be asking for comments and opinion from Reform UK, Labour and others as they limber up for the by-election there. Many think this is a referendum on Keir Starmer's leadership, Andy Burnham being barred by Keir Starmer as the candidate. Reform itself has said that Andy Burnham would quite possibly have won that. Nick Buckley also saying he'd be a formidable opponent, but he's not the candidate now. And so for many, it's a different game. You have your say. We'll return to this many times. Please do like and subscribe. Unprecedented TV is clearly a place of stories. We've just done that now. Thank you very much to Nick. Thanks to the team for coming in on a Saturday. And let's see what happens. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV with the exclusive. Advance UK is contesting the Gorton and Denton by-election. Their candidate, Nick Buckley, MBE.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.